Welcome to World Alert Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. The South China Sea simmered with tension, its turquoise waters concealing a powder keg of geopolitical rivalry and national pride. At the heart of this standoff stood the BRP Sierra Madre, a rusted Philippine outpost intentionally grounded on Second Thomas Shoal decades ago, now facing down a menacing fleet of Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia ships. The Filipino crew, outnumbered and outgunned, braced for confrontation. They were surrounded by larger, newer Chinese vessels, their hulls gleaming with the might of a superpower. Their mission was simple yet fraught with danger: deliver vital supplies, food, water, medicine, to the Marines stationed aboard the Sierra Madre. What should have been a routine resupply had become a perilous gauntlet, with Chinese ships lurking just meters away, watching every move. Suddenly, the air was pierced by the blare of Chinese horns. Over the radio, stern warnings crackled, demanding the Filipinos withdraw from what China claimed as its territory, escalating the tension with every word. But the Filipino captain stood his ground, hands steady at the helm. He knew this was more than a supply run. It was a test of national resolve, a moment that would echo far beyond the shoal. Cameras rolled as a Chinese Coast Guard ship unleashed a powerful water cannon, shattering windows, drenching the crew, and sending a clear message of intimidation. The attack was a calculated show of force, meant not just to repel, but to humiliate and break the spirit of the Filipino sailors. Drenched but undeterred, the Filipino sailors grabbed their smartphones, documenting every moment of the aggression. Their footage would soon become a weapon of its own, exposing the incident to the world. The video spread like wildfire across social media, igniting outrage and sparking heated debate throughout the Philippines and among Filipinos worldwide. In Manila and beyond, the nation watched in a mix of anger and pride as their sailors stood their ground against overwhelming odds, refusing to be cowed. The incident was more than just a headline. It was a national insult, a direct assault on the Philippines' sovereignty and dignity, stirring deep emotions on the streets and in the halls of power. The water cannon blast didn't just damage a boat, it shattered any remaining illusions of friendship, marking a dramatic turning point in Philippine-China relations. The world watched as the Philippines' resolve and China's raw aggression were broadcast in real time, drawing international attention to the flashpoint. The confrontation at Second Thomas Shoal became a rallying cry, uniting Filipinos in indignation and determination to defend their sovereignty. The fragile peace in the South China Sea was shattered, replaced by a new era of vigilance and uncertainty. The Philippines now faced a stark new reality, one that demanded unity and resolve. As the sun rose over the Philippine flag, a sense of national awakening took hold. The people stood united, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The world was watching, and the Philippines would not back down. The flashpoint had arrived, and the next chapter in this struggle was only just beginning. Not long ago, the Philippines and China were on a very different path, their relationship marked by tension and uncertainty. President Duterte's dramatic pivot to China promised a golden age, billions in investments, modern infrastructure, and the hope of economic transformation for millions of Filipinos. The Philippines set aside its South China Sea dispute, hoping to trade sovereignty for prosperity, believing that compromise could unlock a brighter future. China pledged support for Duterte's ambitious Build, Build, Build program, promising new bridges, railways, and economic zones that would reshape the nation's landscape. High-profile visits and grand ceremonies followed, with both sides touting an unbreakable bond and a shared vision for progress. Chinese tourists arrived in record numbers, and a handful of projects broke ground, fueling optimism and a sense of momentum. But beneath the surface, critics warned of danger, sacrificing sovereignty for uncertain gains and raising questions about the true cost of this new alliance. Duterte downplayed the 2016 Hague Tribunal victory, treating it as a mere piece of paper to keep China close, even as many Filipinos felt uneasy. The government's narrative was one of success, but doubts lingered, and not everyone was convinced by the official optimism. Many feared the Philippines was trading long-term security for short-term promises, risking its future for fleeting rewards. The golden age was beginning, but cracks were already visible. unfinished projects, persistent poverty, and growing public skepticism. The country's future was being wagered on a risky bet, with leaders hoping that fortune would favor their bold gamble. The promise of prosperity was seductive, but fragile, built on hopes that could easily be dashed. The stage was set for disappointment as reality began to clash with the grand promises made. The Philippines would soon learn that not all that glitters is gold, and that dreams of easy wealth often come at a steep price. The cost of this gamble was about to become painfully clear as ordinary Filipinos began to feel the consequences. The dream was already starting to unravel, leaving a nation to reckon with the fallout of its choices. The golden age of Chinese investment quickly lost its shine. Many promised projects stalled, funding was slow, and optimism faded. Chinese loans came with opaque terms and high interest, raising fears of a debt trap. Filipinos questioned if the risk was worth it, as jobs went to imported Chinese workers and local resentment grew. Environmental violations and disregard for local laws fueled anger. The economic benefits were minimal, while social and environmental costs mounted. The trade deficit with China widened, and the partnership felt increasingly one-sided. The golden age was golden for China, but for Filipinos, it was fool's gold. Buyer's remorse swept the nation. As economic promises faded, China's aggression in the South China Sea escalated. The Philippines' strategy of setting aside disputes for investment failed on both fronts. Chinese maritime militia swarmed Filipino waters, blocking fishermen and denying access to ancestral grounds. Harassment and intimidation became routine, devastating coastal communities. The government's muted response deepened public anger and eroded trust. The partnership meant to bring prosperity now brought peril. The patience of the Filipino people was wearing thin. The cost of appeasement was now undeniable. Televised Chinese aggression, like the water cannon attack, became a national shock. Raw footage of Filipino sailors under fire galvanized public opinion. The issue of the West Philippine Sea became a matter of pride and dignity, uniting Filipinos across all divides. Social media exploded with outrage. Hashtags, memes, and calls for action trended for weeks. The government's policy of appeasement collapsed under public pressure. Officials defending China were ridiculed. The nation demanded a stronger stance. The fury that began at sea swept across the archipelago. The Filipino people made it clear sovereignty was not for sale. The narrative of friendship with China was shattered. The country was ready for a reckoning. The tide had turned. Outrage became a movement, fueled by social media and grassroots activism. Videos of Chinese harassment spread rapidly, uniting Filipinos in a shared cause. Protests erupted, small, creative, and driven by youth and civil society. Journalists, artists, and musicians amplified the message, making the struggle personal and urgent. The government, under relentless pressure, shifted to a more assertive stance. Diplomatic protests increased, and the Coast Guard adopted a strategy of transparency. The digital uprising forced the state to align with the people's will. The Philippines found its voice and its resolve. The movement could not be ignored. Heroes emerged, not generals, but ordinary Filipinos. Fishermen became symbols of resistance, sharing their stories and forming watchdog groups to monitor Chinese incursions. Civilian convoys risked the seas to support Marines on the Sierra Madre. The Filipino diaspora rallied abroad, raising global awareness and support. Within government, a new generation of diplomats and officers spoke out, using law and diplomacy to challenge China. Heroism was found in every corner, from the seas to the halls of power. The nation's defense became a shared responsibility. The spirit of unity was unbreakable. With China's aggression unrelenting, the Philippines reoriented its foreign policy. The alliance with the United States was revitalized, with renewed military cooperation and clear defense commitments. Joint exercises expanded, and U.S. support bolstered Philippine confidence. New partnerships were forged with Japan, Australia, and European powers, building a coalition for regional stability. ASEAN neighbors were engaged for a unified stance on the South China Sea. The Philippines was no longer isolated. It stood at the center of a growing international consensus. The nation's strategy was clear: multilateralize the issue and deter coercion. China's loss of the Philippines was a strategic blunder that sent shockwaves through the region and beyond. Beijing underestimated the depth of Filipino patriotism, mistakenly believing that economic incentives and promises of prosperity could easily buy loyalty and sway public opinion. Instead, China's aggression only served to unite the nation further, awakening a powerful consensus among Filipinos from all walks of life. The spirit of people power was rekindled, reminding the world that even smaller nations can resist coercion and stand up for their sovereignty. The Philippines leveraged the rule of law, strengthened alliances, and embraced transparency to push back against external pressure. Social media and a vibrant, free press became powerful tools in the ongoing battle of narratives, empowering citizens to share their stories and rally support. On September 15, 2025, the Philippines stands renewed, independent, united, and resilient, with a new sense of national pride and hope for the future. The so-called Golden Age with China is over. A new era of self-determination and regional cooperation has begun for the Filipino people. The threat from abroad remains, but now the nation faces it with clarity, determination, and a renewed sense of purpose. In the end, China lost more than just a partner. It lost the hearts and minds of the Filipino people, who have chosen their own path forward.